Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Rob Harkavy interviews, only on Out News Global. Now, my next guest is a stand-up, a journalist, a podcaster, and author, and her latest book, The Breakup Monologues, is out in May. I am thrilled that she has found the time to talk to us today, so let us give a massive Out News Global welcome to the living legend that is the one and only Rosie Wilby. Hello, Rosie.
Hello, hi Rob.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for that introduction. I should say the book, The Breakup Monologues, is actually out now. It's slightly changed, so
Right.
it is available now. You can get yours now. So I think the original press release you saw, I might have said May.
Okay, so first of all, I'm going to shoot a researcher, and second of all, congratulations for since the first lockdown. I've done about 130 of these interviews, and that is the quickest book plug ever. You are the Usain Bolt of book plugging, so well done on that. Now, so let's dive straight in. What inspired you to write a book about breaking up, which on the face of it is not necessarily a subject brimming with joy?
I got dumped 10 years ago by email, and I joked at the time that I did feel much better after I corrected my ex's spelling and changed the fonts. And so I guess I was mining that difficult and tragic situation for the laughs and for the humour. And as I started to develop a comedy show all about my own breakup story, more and more fellow performers came and started talking to me about their own breakup stories. And I think we all realised that there was something to be gained from looking back at our past breakups. Some time had passed and we had the ability to view them with a bit more perspective, and we could find some humour and healing in looking back, and also realise that we had moved forwards and we had grown as people and we had learned from that painful experience. So I started a podcast called The Breakup Monologues, which we are now, we've done just over 50 episodes, so we're just on fifth season now, and so that's available to download on all the podcast apps. And it's usually me and a couple of other comedians, sometimes authors, sometimes academics and experts who really know about the psychology and science of all this heartbreak and love stuff, and just having a good old chat about breakups, how they work and how we recover from them.
Well, that's interesting. Now, going back to being done on email, it's a subject of
you want to rub it in. You want to be in that painful place.
Yeah. It's a subject of much debate. You know, in the old days when you wrote letters, there were rules about, signing a letter, yours sincerely, yours faithfully. And now sort of in the business world and stuff, people think that's a bit formal. And there's a lot of debate about kind regards, all that kind of stuff. So what was your breakup? Did your ex sign it off kind regards? You're chucked, kind regards.
Yeah, I think what alerted me to the fact that the email was not going to be a good one was that the header, the subject, was pushing and pulling. And I thought, oh, that doesn't sound promising, does it? And, the relationship had been...
Yeah, I haven't thought about that minefield.
But yeah, the relationship had been difficult because she was not out to her family, and this had definitely been. She did come out later, but this had been a source of quite some tension in the relationship. And at one stage, she had tried to reassure me by saying that her parents had enjoyed the film Brokeback Mountain.
Well, it's not exactly the most joyous example.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Really positive sense of how well gay relationships can turn out.
Jesus Christ, yeah. God, so we touched on it a moment ago that back in the old days there were really only two things you could do to break up with someone. Well, three things. You could either see them and do it face to face, write them a letter. That's one of those things you write, put a stamp on it, put in an envelope, stick it in one of those red boxes on the street, kids. So put it in a letter, or maybe move to Brazil. So, emigrate. Now, of course, there's every conceivable platform, not just email has happened to you, and I won't mention it again. But, I mean, I have heard of some people just not even talking to their partner and just changing their relationship status on social media. So, you know, for anyone who is trying to pluck up the courage to end a relationship, you've done 50 podcasts on this. You must have a view. What is your advice of the best medium to use?
Well, I think that very much depends on how well you know your partner, what you think will work for them. And if they're the kind of person that needs a face-to-face conversation and needs to sort of dissect and analyze, you know, what happened and whether there's a productive friendship to take forwards, or whether there are practical logistical arrangements to talk about children that you have, or property that you own together, or pets that you both love and have, you know, there may be a lot of things that you need to discuss. And so, you know, it's very contextual, I think, as to how we do break up with people and what's appropriate. There's my episodes of the podcast where I talked to the comedian Jessica Foster-Q, who for many years thought of herself as straight and was having relationships with men, but latterly she started having a relationship with a woman, and so she had to break up with the father of her child. And she talked about very compassionately separating with him and allowing him some sense of agency. So she said, look, you know, the fact that we're breaking up is not up for discussion, but everything about how that plays out and where we live, how we co-parent together, that is all up for discussion. And I think that it's that sense of giving the person some kind of sense of agency. And I think that's what I felt had been taken away when my partner dumped me by email, because even if we'd had a discussion and we'd come to the same place, I suppose I would have felt I had some part in that. And I think you need to, if what you want to happen is for your relationship to end and you'd run relatively peacefully or amicably, you need to at least let the other person feel like they have some kind of control and sense of agency within the discussion around how it all plays out, I think. But then again, there are some people who are just horrible and abusive, and maybe it is better to just cut off contact and ghost them and move to Brazil, as you say. But I think in general, you know, most human beings, we can behave badly, but most of us are not, you know, not so horrible. Maybe we do deserve some kind of face-to-face conversation. We can all behave badly in moments of emotional stress and turmoil, though, can't we?
Yeah, I mean, I think many years ago, people stayed together, you know, certainly in sort of heterosexual marriage, which I think was more sort of religiously influenced, and people stayed together in very unhappy and often actually abusive relationships because it was their duty and divorce was frowned upon. And therefore it's better now that people, and when I say people, in those situations, it's normally women, feel they can get out and at least avoid, difficult it is, at least avoiding social stigma, but notwithstanding abusive relationships, which clearly we all agree, you know, should end. Do you think that people are more likely to break up now? In other words, sort of less likely to persevere going through a sort of rough patch? Or do you think that's just a myth put out by middle-aged grumpy bastards like me?
Yes, I think we're much likely to have more breakups in a lifetime. We're a more serially monogamous society than we used to be because of all these, like you say, these different kind of ideas coming in now, that we don't necessarily have to stick at it for life in a marriage, and women don't necessarily have to stay in unhappy marriages. Women have more agency and have their own careers and have their own income. So, you know, times have changed. And interestingly, if you look at divorce statistics, it is pretty much always the woman in a heterosexual partnership who initiates the divorce. So we do see lesbians, which we may talk about more later as well. Lesbians have the highest divorce rate of everybody. So we do tend to cycle through partners more quickly than anybody else. We're sort of renowned for our serial monogamous patterns of behavior. And of course, coupled with that, staying friends with exes a lot of the time, which is the good side of it, the sort of the conscious uncoupling. Like, I think we pioneered that idea long before Gwyneth Paltrow.
And the conscious uncoupling. Yeah. Now, I know that you interviewed quite a lot of well-known faces for the book. Can you rattle off a few of those names?
Well, lots of comedians and famous people who've been on my podcast would include Richard Herring, Shapi Kaursandi, Katie Brand, the journalist Miranda Sawyer was very, very illuminating on sort of midlife breakups and perimenopause and how women's sort of hormonal fluctuations at midlife impact our decisions and sudden crushes we might have on inappropriate people. So yeah, lots of people. The podcaster Dolly Alderton, who is sort of very famous in podcasting and writing world. So lots of really, really fantastic people have contributed to the book and the podcast. It's been wonderful to get so many sort of lovely voices from people. The broadcaster Aisha Hazarika sort of talked a little bit about kind of professional breakups. There's a wonderful journalist called Kate Lever, who is an expert on friendship breakups, which is of course another type of ending that we don't necessarily have the same kind of social scripts for. We don't sort of feel the same permission to go and eat ice cream.
Yeah, I mean, the breakup of a close friendship that's gone on for many, many years, I think can, probably be as hurtful as a breakup of a sort of, more a sexual relationship. Just because it's platonic doesn't mean it means less. Now, there's something I'm going to refer to my notes here because I want to get this right. I read somewhere in some of your press that you said breakups can ultimately help us to stay together. WTF do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean is breakups can help us stay together mentally, in the sense that sometimes what we need is actually to go to that difficult, dark and vulnerable place and put ourselves back together and repair ourselves, and we emerge from that process stronger. It's like the Japanese art of kintsugi, where the pots are fixed with the gold lacquer, and actually the cracks in the become a feature of them. They sort of make the pots more valuable. And so I think in the same way, as human beings, we're more valuable if we celebrate our breakages, the difficult and traumatic experiences we have repaired ourselves from and healed from. And actually that makes us, hopefully a more emotionally resilient and honest and open and mature person to be in a future relationship, because we've had that experience and we've learned from it. We've learned how to deal with different kind of types of trauma. And I would say a breakup, although I'm a comedian and I've obviously looked at funny breakup stories and funny aspects of it, it is a traumatic experience too. And we do repair and heal, and that, I think, keeps us together in a sense. And also I think once you've learned from your past breakups, it becomes easier to stay together in your future relationships, and possibly to stay in a friendship with your exes from the past as well, if appropriate, if they haven't moved to Brazil.
Can I just slide in and say your mention of traditional Japanese pottery in relation to breakups has actually just won you a nomination in the Metaphor of the Year, Awards. Congratulations on that. That's fabulous. Now, come on, something that I've noticed, and I don't talk about my personal life on these things, but I have some experience of polyamory, and there's certainly a rise in it. Now, what has the rise in sort of polyamory and polyamorous relationships done to monogamy? I know that sounds a paradoxical question, but how much has it moved the goalposts, and is sexual jealousy a thing of the past?
I don't know if sexual jealousy is a thing of the past, but I think in general, because there is a growing awareness of polyamory and having relationships in different ways, and there being different scripts for how we have a relationship and how it should play out, just means we're becoming more open-minded, in the same way that we're becoming more open-minded about a fluidity of sexual orientation. We're becoming more open-minded about there being more of a spectrum between absolute monogamy and something more fluid, and relationship anarchy or true polyamory sort of at the other end of that. And I think, the American journalist and podcaster Dan Savage talks about monogamish, and a lot of people might be monogamish somewhere in the middle of that. And we do have different arrangements. I personally believe that you can be sexually exclusive with one partner, so have a sexually monogamous relationship, but you can also have sort of polyamorous values attached to that, because I do think when I started investigating polyamory and sort of dipping my toes into that world and seeing if that would suit me and the way that I had relationships, what I loved was the honesty and the communication and the respect that people had for their partners in general. Some people are not doing it well, but most people I met were doing it in an incredibly ethical and compassionate way. And I really, really loved that. And I thought it was very inspiring. And I thought, actually, there's a ton of values that you can just take back into monogamy. And you can sort of look at monogamy in a more polyamorous way and look at the fact that actually you and your partner probably do need to get some of your needs met by other people, even if it's, just somebody that you go to the cinema with because they share a more compatible taste in film with you. Your partner can't necessarily be everything to you. And it reminds me, one time when I was doing research for my first book, I went and did a comedy at a sex party, and it was an interesting gig. And there were a set of rules that you had to sign up to on entry that were all about but there were a set of rules that you had to sign up to about sort of respecting other people's space and boundaries and not getting too drunk. And there was a real sense of accountability. Really, you had to go in with another person who would vouch for you. And I just thought those are just great rules for every relationship, whether you're, polyamorous or not.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that, because as you were starting answering that question, I did think of sex and fetish clubs and the paradox. It is a paradox that those who are seen maybe to be a bit more loose and outside the mainstream, and certainly outside monogamy and sort of mainstream sex, are seen as being sort of by the mainstream as being disreputable. But when you actually dig down into it, fetish clubs, sex clubs, polyamorous people are actually more respectful of each other. I mean, I know lots of, I've got a daughter who's, as far as I'm aware, she doesn't go to sex or fetish clubs. She's only 20, but I do know that when she goes to mainstream clubs, she is constantly being groped and touched. I mean, thank goodness nothing awful has happened to her and she can handle herself, but you don't get that sort of thing in sex or fetish clubs, and it's quite an interesting paradox, I think. Now, you mentioned about the divorce rate in lesbians, which actually, I know we're having a bit of a laugh, but that is not a laughing matter. But do you think that in general lesbians have a different approach to relationships than, say, straight men or straight people or gay men, for example?
Yes. What I found in my research, and this is sort of something that I touched on in a TEDx talk that I did and people can see online, is you tend to see, as a general rule, gay men often having open relationships. There is a sexually open partnership, but there's a real fidelity, a real sense of being faithful to the primary relationship. And you see gay men staying within their primary partnerships for long periods of time and staying together forever. I'm going to be meeting up with my very good gay male friend Peter later on, who's had a relationship and just swears by that as just, a wonderful way to be, and just having a very respectful, safe agreement that they can see other people for kind of more fun, casual and more sort of temporary connections and relationships outside of that. Whereas you see lesbians in general, and I'm talking about lesbians sort of my age, which I'm cracking on a bit, and some of the younger queer women who are being more but some of the younger queer women who are being more fluid around labels and the whole thing maybe have some different ways of approaching this now. But lesbians my sort of age have traditionally stuck very rigidly to monogamy, but not a lifelong monogamy, actually a serial monogamy. And you see people having relationships for 3, 4, 5 years and then moving on to the next person. But in general, separating consciously and compassionately and staying friends. And you can often be sitting around the table with a group of lesbians and realizing you've slept with everybody, but at least you're all still friends. So it's kind of okay. You've got lots of people to call on for cat sitting.
Speak for yourself. I don't think you should tar every lesbian with your own slutty brush, if you don't mind me saying so.
Slutty. Imagine what a slutty brush would be. What sort of colour my slutty paint would be.
Oh yeah, I don't know. I always think purple, but you know. Now, sadly, the clock is beating us. But before we move on, you don't just write books, you do stand up. Where and when are you on next, and how can people come and see you? I know you're on near me soon, actually, up in Muswell Hill, aren't you? And I'm going to come and see that. But where else are you on in the near future?
Oh, are you? Yeah. Well, yeah, I am going to be up there, not too far off in the future. I'll be recording a live episode of the Breakup Monologues podcast at King's Place in King's Cross on April the 22nd, with guests including Jenny Ryan from The Chase. She's one of the chasers on the TV show. I'll be at various festivals over the summer, including a gay women's festival, wellbeing festival called Out and Wild. And I'll also be up in the wilds of beautiful Scotland in Oban at the end of August for the Oban Lesbian Weekend that one of your lovely colleagues is organising.
Yeah, I actually might be up there myself, although obviously I'm not going to go to every event, safe space for women and all that, but I might just go up there to kind of keep an eye on everything. Rosie, good luck with the book. Folks, you can see on your screen now all the information how to get to Rosie's website to find out more about her forthcoming gigs. Yes, she's showing you the book now, and you can get that from all major retailers or from Amazon, but try and get it from your local bookshop if you can, folks, and you can do that right now. And now it only remains for me to say, Rosie Wilby, thank you so much for joining us, and for the future, I wish you much love, luck, and happiness. Thank you, Rosie.